want to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brandflakes here, back with a new chaoszeronightmare video. If you've been paying attention a lot to the community recently, we all know that Chizuru is coming out soon, and we've also been seeing a lot of new showcase videos that have featured a lot of characters that were once considered a bit on the weaker side, aka Luke, I'm looking right at you. So with Chizuru coming out soon, I've decided to make kind of an analysis guide for determining if a character is actually good or not. Obviously with Yuki was pretty lackluster when it came to single target burst, but I think she is pretty much okay in the department where she is playable and everything, and she can get some decent mileage. However, that's not really what people complain about when they complain about Yuki. And I want to talk about what makes a character truly overpowered in the game of chaoszeronightmare. And now there are two different dimensions for CZN that we have to talk about. One is going to be the roguelite simulator, which is going to be the chaos mode, which is, the part where you build your decks and you want to clear the run and you have to fight for your epiphanies and everything. And then the other side is going to be the more true gacha side, where it is in the content where you've built your full decks, you have all the stuff set up properly, and you have these proper teams that can really abuse the game in ways that the game was probably not meant to be abused in. This is all to say that while chaoszeronightmare is a game that is fairly well balanced, all things said and done, it is actually pretty horrifically balanced because there are a lot of characters that are not built with the same level of privilege as other characters, and this video will get into the depths of that. So what am I talking about? So basically, when we think about characters that are really broken in chaos mode, we're talking about characters like Veronica, like Felipe, like Mika, characters who are very standardly powerful with their base kit, and they basically can't miss with whatever epiphany they have. On the other side, the content that people actually care about with content creation and highlight videos are going to be characters like Mei Lin, like Haru, like Tressa, a lot of these characters that just have extremely high peaks in power once you've gotten everything combined. And so I want to talk about what makes these gacha side characters really strong. So starting off with Mei Lin, I think Mei Lin is probably the character that is the easiest to describe and therefore sets the best framework for why characters can be really overpowered in this game. And so Mei Lin obviously has a card called Rising Dragonspire, and this is a card that gains extra hits every time you play a passion card. Now this is not capped. There are a lot of cards in this game that have caps to their hits, and there are a lot of cards in this game that do not have caps to their hits, and Mei Lin obviously belongs to the latter. Not having a capped out hit count means you can do some ridiculous things that I have done myself, where you just stack up a billion passion cards, and then you maybe get some damage buffs in there through Mei Lin's own kit, maybe through some morale stacks from other sources, and then you proceed to one-shot a boss with either 1 or 2 Rising Dragonspires, depending on your build, and that's just ridiculous. And therefore, Mei Lin is not only the most accessible version of these really overpowered gacha side content cheesers, but also represents the peak of that power. There are a lot of other characters that have similar results to this, such as Luke. So Luke was a character that people considered really bad, but I guess rather because he's a male character, or maybe he was just very unpopular for his design, probably both combined, he also has an uncapped hit count epiphany called Dance of the Demons, which is what allows him to become a new YouTube highlight creator. And that is a pretty big deal, because if you had known how Mei Lin works and you had taken the time to search through all the characters, obviously Luke is a very high star character, so he wasn't going to be as easy to just test out if you didn't have him built. If you saw the text on this card and you played Mei Lin, you would automatically know, oh, this Luke guy has a lot of sauce. And obviously, Luke is a bit more constrictive in deck building, but this just goes to show that these uncapped hit count cards, they are very powerful. And an honorable mention for these uncapped hit count cards is going to be Selena, who shares the same niche with Mei Lin, where it's the more passion cards you play, the better it is. It doesn't benefit as much as from resolve or even damage percent amount because of how low the base scaling is, but it is another example of a character that does technically have infinite scaling, and you could actually hit a pretty sick highlight with someone like Selena if you so chose to chase that peak, because you're probably going to be playing Mei Lin with Selena. It's probably going to be like Selena, Mei Lin, Veronica, and it's going to be kind of weird playing, Mei Lin in a comp where she's not the actual OTKer, but you still use, ironically enough, a Rise of Dragonspire with Selena to get a double hit on the drone bombing to really pump up that damage. But if someone else wants to make that video, go ahead. My Selena is still not built, so that will be my job for now. But other characters that are really strong in chaoszeronightmare's true gacha side are going to be characters that have really, really high scaling, but don't theoretically go nearly as infinite. So A character that kind of treads the line between going infinite and not going infinite is actually going to be Tressa. Tressa is obviously the free-to-play 4-star unit, and with Shadow Reload's upgrade, you can duplicate this a few times, you can heal yourself, generate 3 Shadow Daggers, and obviously that stacks really, really well with just doing a lot of things like stacking your agony stacks. And the reason why this is treading the line between true infinite and extremely high scaling is because if you run this with Cassius, a lot of people are finding out that Cassius is a beautiful enabler for these characters that have these zero cost generators. So for example, with Cassius, when you come look at Luke and Tressa, if you play Cassius and you are able to proc the 000 quest line, now all of a sudden both Tressa and Luke are getting insane value because you are constantly playing zero costs as these characters, which means that Cassius can now finish his quest line. And then with the Dice Trick upgrade, that means you can also generate an extra card. And these extra cards, for Tressa's sake, you can get some healing, which obviously generates more Shadow Daggers, or you can get some draw, you can get some bonus morale, which is obviously very high scaling. You can also just get some more 000 procs for Cassius himself to also go that pseudo infinite style. So we're seeing a lot of innovation, and Cassius is kind of bouncing off of that, like, this is the carry, this is what they do. Cassius is kind of just more like the example of a lot of these pseudo infinite / very high potential characters aren't really going to be found until you look at all the supports, and Cassius is a pretty good find for people who want to abuse these zero cost scaling effects. But going on into the rest of the extremely high scaling characters, we have things like Haru, where Haru uses Anchor Shot, can stack it up to a very high base amount, and then pump damage with that. In a very same vein, Rin is doing the same thing with her Dark Mist Secret Arts, Annihilation, and Black Dance. You can bounce these back with her draw card. I think it's called Dark Mist Secret Art Destruction. And then very similar to Haru, where you're just bouncing these very high multiplier cards back and forth. And if the content is squishy enough, and or if you have enough morale stacks or other supports giving her damage ups, you can then one-shot a content because you have enough bounces to get that damage out. But this is much more finite compared to stuff like Maylin, Luke, Selena, and Tressa, because these are things that you can only really do as many times as you have duplicates, and you can only have so many duplicates with stuff like Rin and Haru. And the final example of this is going to be Beryl with their opening found, which allows you to just stack retains over and over and over again. And obviously you can only have so many retains, you can only trigger retains so many times, but with Beryl, with their opening found, much like Tressa, if you stack a bunch of upgrades, you can have a lot of pops from Beryl and really just start shooting people down in a really funny way with that spam. And then with supports, we obviously already talked about Cassius, who enables very unique, comparatively to Maylin at least, very unique one-shots and high burst combos. We have stuff like Veronica, who is not even a great damage support, but Veronica is really strong for these combos because she is someone who cycles a lot of deck for very, very cheaply. And that's the reason why when you're playing stuff like, when you're playing things that have Cassius, you usually don't need Veronica because you come with your card draw. And Veronica is definitely very interchangeable with Nia, who is also a very strong cycler. But because earlier I mentioned that Veronica is a very powerful chaos finisher, that's the reason why she ends up being in a lot of these teams, because she is someone that you're running anyways for getting these better true gacha content decks. And so since she's in some of those teams, you very often accidentally get a really good cycling deck for Veronica, and she ends up just being a powerhouse for Pot of Greeting your entire deck out. Now, Nia is similar to Veronica, where she's a very powerful draw engine, but she relies a lot on, I think the card is called Eternal Hunger, one of the forbidden cards, and you discard that card, draw it back, or you bounce it around somehow, and she is essentially like Mika and Veronica in one, where she gives you a lot of card draw, she gives you a lot of AP, and she is a one-stop shop for just giving you resources for your other characters to be AP hungry or draw hungry and do everything you need for that. And then Mika, obviously classic, very much like Veronica, you're usually running her anyways in Chaos, so while she isn't nearly as good for cycling or even just AP generation compared to Nia, she does have her uses, and that's why she shows up a lot in these showcases. And all that to say, with Chizuru on the horizon, she will unfortunately have to fit one of these niches of being a true pseudo one-turn infinite with the uncapped hit count card, or she'll have to have some pretty absurd scaling in order to really appropriately be a part of these upper echelon of characters. There's also Renoa, but I didn't talk about Renoa because she's a bit more weird of a scaler, and we'll really have to see, because I think as we're recording this video, she is not quite released and teased. She should be being teased around December 2nd, as far as I know, maybe a bit earlier. And hopefully she manages to dodge the Yuki issue, where she doesn't have these ways to do really good damage, because obviously, as a game, this game doesn't have much going on besides, highlight reels and all that. So, yeah. If you guys didn't know how these scalings worked for these characters before, hopefully this video was helpful for that. And I hope you guys have a good day or night wherever you are. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.